Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. 8 mic drop fragrances that leave a lasting impression. And I don't know about you, but for me, once or twice a year, for sure, I'll wake up and I'll look at my fragrances and I'll be like, I'm going for it today. And normally I wear 5 or 6 sprays. Those days, it's more like 15 or 20. We all do that every now and again. We overspray hardcore. This is not a video for sissy sprayers. These are fragrances that are perfect for overspraying. And in case you don't know, a mic drop is if you're on stage, you got a microphone, and you make a point so powerful, you drop that mic because there's nothing more to say. You've made your point. You can make a point with fragrances. That happened to me last summer. I was paying for gas. I'll never forget it. I've talked about this before. In walked a middle-aged Indian woman. She got within 10 feet of me and she dropped the mic. Her fragrance was massive, all-encompassing. She smelled amazing. She looked amazing. She dropped the mic. You can do that with fragrances. These are 8 great ones to do that with. This is Café Tuberosa from L'Atelier Colognes, and this has got to be one of my top candidates for this particular drop the mic moment because this is a very, very strong fragrance, but boy, is it distinct, and it is quite pungent. And you wouldn't think it would come from a white floral, but that's what it does because there is a ton of tuberose in here, as the name suggests. And tuberose is not your grandma's white floral. It can be done in a very fecal, very strong, very pungent way, and it is here. Now, thank God the tuberose is backed up with a lot of coffee and a lot of chocolate. So it's kind of meant to smell a little bit like a Parisian cafe. You know, you go in, you got the coffee, you have a little bit of chocolate croissant, and then you got the flowers hanging up. So yeah, it's got a little bit of a feel, but oh boy, is it a distinct and very strong smell. But it doesn't start that way because this particular house has got a fragrance concentration called Cologne Absolu. So it starts like an eau de cologne, very fresh and airy, but it ends like an Absolu. And an Absolu is a very strong fragrance concentration. In this particular case, it finishes like an eau de parfum. So it starts like an eau de cologne, ends like an eau de parfum. Once the eau de parfum part kicks in, it is super strong. It is super pungent. Lovely fragrance, mic drop fragrance. Fragrance number 2, this is Westloop from Michael Malul London and Gents. And even though this is called Michael Malul London, this is actually an American house. And Westloop is the name of a neighborhood in Chicago that this fragrance is named after. And it is a foodie neighborhood. There's tons of restaurants in there. It's central Chicago. It's very urban, very cool place to be, a little bit yuppie-ish kind of thing. But definitely gourmandy. Now, I have been critical of a lot of gourmands because they all kind of smell the same. They all can be a little bit feminine. This is a fantastic gourmand. It actually won an award. It's a designer house, but it won a niche award in 2019 at the Artisan Awards for Best Urban Fragrance. So it's more than just a gourmand fragrance because yes, it's got an ambery component, but it also has a heavy floral component. What they use here is almond blossom, so a floral element, a little bit sweet, and vanilla orchid, same thing again. There's a lot of tonka, and then thankfully there's a ton of cinnamon to add a spicy component to it. So it's an award-winning fragrance. There are also a lot of rumors out there that Leonardo DiCaprio, of all people, requested and received a special version of this that he wears. So super trendy fragrance, excellent performance, reasonable price. Yeah, mic drop fragrance for sure. Fragrance number 3, this is Boss Bottle Absolu 2024. The first thing I read about this was it ramps up the intensity in the Boss Bottle line. And boy, you want to do that? You do that with opening with a leather note. And there's a ton of leather in this fragrance. And that's how they start. Normally leather is a mid note or a base note, but this starts with leather and incense, although to be fair, in this case, the incense note is more done in a fresh resinous way like frankincense rather than a smoky way. And then in the mid, though, you get a really nice sweet patchouli with myrrh. It's got a resinous, almost balsamic quality. And in the base, you've got cedar and Davana. Now, there are balsamic qualities in all 3 layers. You've got a very prominent balsamic, very masculine accord right at the top of this fragrance. And when I see that, I go looking for Anique Minardo. She is famous for doing really strange and daring accords, and she did it with this one. I'm not sure of that. There were two perfumers, but I'd bet my car that she was the one behind making that balsamic accord. So prominent. But yeah, this is a very intense fragrance, and it starts with leather. Fragrance number 4, this is Farenheit Le Parfum. And yes, 2 for 2 fragrances start with a leather accord. And that is incredibly rare. Even the original Farenheit does not start with leather. This one does. Now, to be fair, the leather note, they called it suede, but they definitely toned down the leather note for this one. Apparently, they used an oud accord to give it a lighter feel, believe it or not, instead of like the heavy, sharp leather that they had going with the violet leaf in the first one. So they called it suede instead. I mean, it basically just a lighter leather note. There's still plenty of the original Farenheit DNA, that mixture of leather and violet leaf. You still do get that. But then there are many gourmandy elements to this as well, including vanilla, licorice, and rum, little boozy. The only problem with this fragrance is availability. And ever since I started collecting, the availability of this and the Parfum has always been sporadic in North America. I knew it was the case. I did not know it was on purpose until I read something recently. So yeah, if it's not available now, it will be soon. They're just messing with you. This thing is brilliant. Fragrance number 5, Boss Descent Magnetic, and they really went all out with this fragrance. They brought in Delphine Lebeau. She is a perfumer that you have not have heard of because she hardly does any men's fragrances, but she is a renowned boundary pusher. This is the only fragrance she's ever done for Hugo Boss, and she pushed the boundaries here in a really interesting way because while this is sweet and gourmandy, it is also incredibly powdery. Now, I didn't know she had done that on purpose until I read a quote of hers, because I've said that before. So I was right about something. That was great. But yeah, she wanted this to still be sophisticated and have a sophisticated element, despite the fact that it was super sweet. Now, she succeeded because this still is super sweet, but it does have a powdery element. So you've got a lot of vanilla in it, but it comes from black vanilla husk, which is a powdery vanilla note. It also got a lot of bran in it, which is like got a toasted cereal note, but it's super powdery. So you got those two powdery notes, a lot of maninka in here. Like this might be the most powerful maninka you're going to get. So it is sweet, but it's powdery at the same time. It is a boundary pushing fragrance. But I do think this is wearable from people of all ages. I walked my talk today. Fragrance number 6. This is Jovan Musk, 1973. Musky, kind of old-fashioned scent. It's inexpensive, and I put 25 sprays on today. Today was the day for a mic drop day. I reek of this stuff, but I love it. It smells great. Now, it is more than just musk. There is a lot of musk, but there's also a lot of spices. Comes from 3 different notes. There's a generic spice note. There is carnation, which is a floral spicy note, a lot of black pepper. It's actually a pleasant fragrance. Definitely has a little bit of an old school feel. It's inexpensive, so I got no problems spraying a ton of it on me. Performance is actually not too bad. So yeah, I smell pretty strongly of it at the moment. I don't care. It's a mic drop day for me. Fragrance number 7. Now you do have to be careful with this one. I wouldn't do 25 sprays. I would not do more than 10 because this is super strong. This is Initio's Oud for Greatness. And this is a very pleasant oud fragrance, but boy, is this one strong. Be careful with a lot of like strong niche fragrances when it comes to doing the heavy overspray. So what this has is a sweet patchouli. I always wondered why the fragrance was so sweet, but patchouli can be done in a very sweet way, and there's a lot of it here. A ton of oud and a ton of spices as well. Saffron, nutmeg, and lavender give it a spicy freshness, and then you've got a musky base. It has a weird metallic feel to it, though. It's kind of buried, so it's not something you pick up all the time, but it's just a very interesting, very experimental, very out there oud fragrance, but generally pretty pleasant because it's very sweet. Fragrance number 8, we have Sapil Bound, a very inexpensive clone of Armani Code Profumo. And it's very rare to do what they have done here. They didn't hide the fact that they were cloning Profumo. Normally they'll do that. They'll have different accords and different notes. No, 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 no. They went all in on the notes are exactly the same. It's rare to see that. It really does smell a lot like Profumo. It is cheap though. It's like a $20, $25 fragrance. So definitely synthetic, but the price makes it all the better to, overspray with because it's not going to cost you a fortune. It really does smell like Profumo. And this thing projects an awful lot too. So yeah, maybe I'll try this one tomorrow. So it's a nice mix of cardamom, leather, and tonka. It's sweet, it's leathery, there's a spicy component. I do think this is spicier than the Absolu version, and it is copying my favorite in the Code line. I really like this fragrance, but it definitely is a little bit more synthetic, so just be careful. So yeah, this is like a go for it day, and yeah, I backed it up. I've had a couple comments already, I must say. Haven't all been great, but you know what? I don't care. You know what? I'm sure everybody thinks like this every now and again. A lot of people watching will have a lot of fragrances, and you just have those days. You wake up and you're like, you know what? I'm going for it. And that lady at that gas station, man, I will never forget that as long as I live. She smelled awesome. Anyway, thanks for watching.